Welcome back to Planet Doug Behind the Scenes for Thursday, July 13th, 2023. 2 or 3 days before my flight to Sumatra, and I thought I'd start with a Life Planet Doug sort of update. I got some good news. I was, making arrangements for my return to Sumatra, and the way this works out is I fly into a city called Padang, and then I have to find some sort of transportation, but there is a van company that takes people from the airport to Bukit Tinggi, and then Bukit Tinggi is the nearby city close to the village where I was staying last time, and my bike and all my other gear is still in the village. So I have to go back to the village first, no matter what I do, and then reunite with my bicycle and go from there. But then, I sent a message to someone that I know who lives in the village in Sarik. And he said, let me know when your flight lands and when the van gets you to Bukit Tinggi, and I'll come pick you up. So can't argue with that. It's not quite an airport pickup, but that's understandable because the airport in Padang is 2.5 hours away from Bukit Tinggi. So I'm just going to take a van up the mountain. Basically at Padang, you're down at ocean level, and then I have to climb up into the coastal mountains to Bukit Tinggi, which is at a higher altitude. And I was going to spend the night in a hotel in Bukit Tinggi, as close to Sarik as I could get. And then in the morning, I was probably just going to walk. It's a little bit of a hike to get from the hotel I had my eyes on out to the village, but I thought it would be a pleasant enough walk. So that's what I was going to do, but then a friend of mine said, I'm in Bukit Tinggi and I'll come pick you up, and I guess he's going to drive me out to the village on that day. So that's working out very well. And when I was talking about my plans for Sumatra before, I was thinking about riding my bike down the coast of Sumatra south with the idea of going to a city called Bengkulu. And it was an appealing idea because riding along the coast is always nice. It's nice to be on the ocean, of course. But now I'm kind of rethinking those plans. One thing is I realized I was sort of making the same mistake that I was talking about in a previous video. I've seen so many people do this, where they're home, usually in their home country, and then they're planning some kind of a trip. They want to go traveling, and then of course what they do is they take a pencil and draw a line that goes all the way around the world. And somehow this is a romantic idea, to travel around the world, and they end up drawing this line that goes through 35, 70 different countries, whatever it is, in a big loop. And I think as humans, we always do that, but as we sort of value the place that is farthest away while ignoring what is right beside us. And I sort of realized I was kind of doing that when I was thinking about going to Bengkulu, because there I am in Bukit Tinggi, and then I was like, oh, where can I go? And I see this city all along the coast called Bengkulu, and it's about 700 kilometers away. And that's an okay distance to cycle. That's no big deal. But the problem with Bengkulu is that once I'm there, I have to get all the way back to Dumai eventually, and Dumai is over here. I don't know if I'm still in the camera frame, but it's sort of like Bukit Tinggi, Bengkulu, and then Dumai. So basically, if I cycle south all the way to Bengkulu, then I pretty much have to just turn around and cycle all the way back and then all the way here. And it ends up being, thousands of kilometers to do that. And I started doing an actual summary of the days. Like when you only have 30 days per visa, you really don't have a lot of days, and they just go by so fast if you're not prepared for it. This time I'm trying to be more prepared for it. So I actually laid out a little chart day by day by day. It's sort of like, you have days 1 to 30. Day 1 is my arrival. That's just me flying into the country. That's 1 day gone. It's not like 30 days after you arrive. The first day is day number 1. So even if you arrive at 10 o'clock at night, the whole day you weren't in that country, well, that is your first day. So that's the first day on your visa. The second day is often kind of a recovery day, just recovering from the flight, getting a SIM card, getting organized, figuring out where to go next. So already 2 days are gone. And then you might spend 2 or 3 days exploring where you are. And I kind of went step by step. It's like, okay, where do I want to go? Oh, I want to go to this lake. So 1 day cycling to get to the lake. Then I want to spend 2 or 3 days on the lake. And I'm sort of adding up all of these days. And before I knew it, I had hit 30 days. Saying I was nowhere near the city of Bengkulu because I spent so many days in all these places. And what I realized, of course, is that right there near Bukit Tinggi is the city of Padang, coastal city, just like Bengkulu. And then yesterday on Google Maps, which I really like to do, I centered Padang, the city of Padang, on Google Maps and turned on satellite view so I could actually see, satellite imagery of the city. And I zoomed in as tight as I could. And then I just started like moving across the city in a grid on satellite view, just looking for anything that was interesting. Because it sits right on the coast, and you've got all these little harbors, and you might have an island over here, a beach over here, a fishing harbor over here. And the more I spent looking at Padang, the more I realized it looked to be a very interesting city. And I've never been to Padang, right? And Padang is right there beside Bukit Tinggi. So why am I instantly planning on going to a city 700 kilometers away when there's a very interesting city right there, right beside Bukit Tinggi? You know what I mean? So in my mind, I was even cycling from Bukit Tinggi to this lake and then down to the coast, and I was going to bypass the city of Padang and then cycle along the coast to get to Bengkulu. But that makes no sense at all. Like, why am I working so hard to get to Bengkulu when Padang is right there? Like, think about the opposite. If you take a visitor who happens to be in Bengkulu, he's probably looking at the map and going, oh, there's Padang. I really want to visit Padang. And he'll plan this huge journey to go from Bengkulu to Padang just because it's farther away. We always want to go somewhere that's farther away. It seems more romantic or something. So if he's going to make that big journey all the way from Bengkulu just to get to Padang, and I'm already there, I might as well explore Padang, right? So anyway, I started rethinking some of my plans, and I have a more realistic idea in mind where I might land in Bukit Tinggi and perhaps cycle to a city called Payakumbuh, Harau Valley, then sort of back a little bit, go down to the lake, and then from the lake I can then cycle down to the coast north of Padang. Looks like a very interesting town there on the water with some offshore islands. I can hang out there for a few days and then ride my bike down the coast to Padang, spend time in Padang, and I can explore that whole area. And by the time I do all those things, 30 days will have expired, and then I can go to the immigration office in Padang. Instead of, for whatever reason, thinking I have to ride 700 kilometers to get somewhere interesting. I mean, I'm already based somewhere interesting, so I might as well kind of keep my travels more regional right there, Anyway, so that's what my thoughts have been like in terms of my return to Sumatra. And I'm feeling a little bit better about this idea. I haven't committed to it or anything, but it's just a thought that I had. In terms of preparations for this trip, my big task yesterday, for whatever reason, I had my heart set on buying a small rig mounting apparatus, which is a combination mounting apparatus and audio splitter, so that I can combine the signal from two microphones into one. I don't know, I often get obsessions. I'll get an idea in my head of something, and then I just become so focused on it and so focused on it that I'm not thinking that clearly anymore. But anyway, it seemed like this object would be very, very useful to me. So I went on a trip down to Pudu, and I went to a camera store, and they had one. I told all this story in a special audio only behind the scenes video. There's no video in it. All I did was go all the way to Pudu, and I spoke into this microphone, but I didn't have it hooked up to a camera. So I recorded the audio internally. I had this on a selfie stick, so I basically had, this stick, and I had the microphone on there, and then I was talking into it as I was walking, just walking along and speaking into the mic. And I'm still editing those audio files. It was, just an experiment to see how that worked out. I may or may not post it, but we will see. But in that audio, video, podcast, whatever it is, I talked about going to the camera store in Pudu, and they had this item I was looking for. They had one left. I think it was very old stock, and they just happened to have one on the shelves still. So I bought it at a good price, nothing wrong with the price, and good value for what it is. But by the time I got it back here, opened up the box and started to use it, I was, well, even in the camera store, I picked it up because it was out of the box, and it was like, ooh, this is heavier than I thought. It's a very solid piece of gear. I thought it would be like lightweight aluminum or plastic and would have no weight to it, but it's heavy. It's a heavy, solid thing. And I played around with it. I put it on the GoPro, fed 2 microphones into it, fed those 2 microphones into the GoPro, and by the time it was done, it was just it was a mess. It's too big, it's too heavy. I end up with 3 different cords, 1 cord from each microphone, and then a 3rd cord going from the mounting apparatus to the GoPro. The whole thing that I mounted on top of the GoPro to do this was bigger and heavier than the GoPro itself. So no, this thing, I'm not going to have any use for it in terms of mounting it on the camera, not for walking around. I mean, I could use it in more of a studio setting. I mean, I could set up my camera indoors on a tripod, and then I can use this device, but it's too heavy to mount on the camera itself. And I probably could have guessed that in advance, but I thought I'd take a chance on it anyway, so now I have it. I don't even know whether I'm going to keep it. I can't return it. That's just not the way things work in Malaysia. You can't buy something and then decide you don't like it and bring it back and get your money back, We can actually do that in Canada. It seems crazy now to think about it because I always took it for granted that we could just do that in Canada. You buy something at Walmart and then bring it home and you realize you bought the wrong one. Well, you just bring it back and exchange it for a different item or get your money back. And that's normal. That's how I grew up. But in many other countries that I visited, like Malaysia, that's insane. Of course you can't do that. When you buy it, you own it. And, the receipts you get from the store say right on it, no exchanges, no money back. You buy it, see you later. It's yours. You're not getting your money back from us. So, yeah, that's always, I'm always surprised by that, the difference between shopping in Canada and here, for example. But anyway, I can't get my money back for this item. And I don't know whether I want to carry it around now, because as I said, it's not a daily use item. I could only use it occasionally, if I mount it like in a studio setting or something. So I don't know if it's worth carrying it around or not. We shall see. So I had that small adventure, and then I went to a restaurant, had lunch. All of that is in the audio thing. My big adventure for today was changing money, and typical Planet Doug style, running that little errand kicked off a lot of random thoughts. I wanted to get 10 million Indonesian rupiah, which is about the equivalent of 3,000 ringgit. Maybe, I forget how much that is in US dollars, but so I had all of this ready, and I did all the calculations in advance. I had about 3,000 Malaysian ringgit, and then I was going to exchange it for 10 million rupiah. And I have my favorite, not my favorite, but I know about a money changing place that I always go to. It's in the middle of a big shopping mall. So I went down there, and then I feel like I missed out on my career. I should have been a random consultant about organization, because all I do is think about how places are not organized well enough. Because I go to this money changing booth, it's got 3 windows, and you've got a lineup in front of each window, but you can't really tell who's in a lineup and who isn't, because in all these money changing places, they have a big board on the inside. Like it's a little booth, right? Surrounded by probably bulletproof plexiglass, and they got the tiny holes drilled in it, and you're supposed to sort of shout through the holes. You can't hear what they say. It's a horrible place to do an interaction, because I can't hear them, they can't hear me. We're trying to speak through this little window. But they have a big board on the wall behind them that shows all the exchange rates. So all kinds of people who are thinking about changing money, they want to check the exchange rates. So they have to get really close to the window so they can see these tiny numbers. So all these people are kind of crowding around the exchange business, getting in everybody's way, just sort of standing randomly looking up at the board and, you know, calculating things on their phone and trying to figure things out. But they're often sort of standing in one of the lines, and they're sort of not. And you end up standing behind people for a few minutes, and then you figure out, oh, they're not even waiting in line, they're just looking at the board. And then other people have cut ahead of you because they're actually in line, but now you got to go all the way to the back of that line because you can't really see where the lines start or stop. So you got that whole thing. And then I got into a lineup. I knew, okay, this is a real lineup. I'm waiting my turn. I finally get to the window, and I had it prepared in advance on my phone. I wrote out the numbers, how much I wanted to buy, 10 million rupiah. I had it in big letters, made it clear it was Indonesian rupiah, because I can't speak through those little holes. So I try to speak through the holes, but I also show them on my phone. I've written down what I want. They can read it. So I get up to the glass and I do that. And then the woman says, no, you don't do that at this window. This window is only for people who are sending money, like a Western Union kind of thing. You're wiring money somewhere. That's what that window is for. If I want to change money, I have to go to the other 2 windows. But, of course, there are no signs indicating that. There's no indication that this is where you change money and this is where you send money. Like, how hard is it to put up a sign, I ask you? And how can you possibly go to work every day, day after day, you're in your window, and every 3rd person in your lineup is trying to change money, and you have to tell them, oh, no, you don't change money here. This is for sending money. Like, how many times do you tell people that? How many months, how many years do you do this job, constantly telling people to go to a different window before the light bulb goes off? And you think, oh, maybe I should show some initiative and put a sign up that says, only, however you word it in this business, only sending money abroad, put up signs, that occurs to me all the time. There's a little place just outside here near the Masjid Jamek, or there's a whole bunch of places, where you can buy food, all these street stalls. And I, frequently buy snacks there, buy, lunches there, whatever. And I've recently been going to this place where they sell curry puffs or, samosas, whatever you want to call them. But every time I go there, there's confusion because they've got a big tray of them, but I don't know which ones they have. I know from experience that sometimes they have chicken, sometimes they have tuna, sometimes they have potato, but they're all just sort of there. And every single time I go there, we go through the same routine. I have to ask the guy. It's like, okay, like, what do you have? Like, what are these? What are these? What are these? What are these? And he has to stop whatever he's doing and explain to me, okay, these are potato, these are just straight chicken. Okay, these are beef. He has to tell me what each of them are before I can decide which ones I want. And again, he does this every day, all day, day after day after day. And I'm thinking, when does the light bulb go off? Just get yourself a little piece of paper, piece of cardboard, and a magic marker from the local stationery store and write down, chicken, beef, tuna, potato. Get a little chopstick or a stick and put a little sign on each one so people don't have to constantly bother you about which ones, because I won't go back to this place. I'll walk by and I'm thinking, I could use some curry puffs, but I don't want to bother the guy. It's like, oh, I have to ask him again. He's busy cooking over there. And it's like, okay, what do you have today? And which ones are these? And it's like, just put up a little sign, you know? But yeah, no one ever does that, which always strikes me as quite amusing. And these money exchange places, I've often thought about that. Stop for a sip of coffee. This doesn't have anything to do with lack of organization where an employee can make a change. This is bigger than that. But whenever I go to these places, it's always a little bit uncomfortable because, I mean, you're dealing with money, of course. And if you're leaving on a trip, or you're a local worker, you're sending money home, you're generally changing a relatively large amount of money. And these money changing booths are generally very small, tiny windows, and they're usually right out on the street, or in this case, it's right in a busy mall, and there's people everywhere, and it's crowded, and there's no room or space. But basically, for you as a customer, there's no security at all. You know, I changed 3,000 ringgit. I got 10 million rupiah. And when you're going from one currency to another, it's really easy to get confused about the numbers, especially when you're dealing with a lot of zeros. Because for Indonesia, you know, you're getting a lot of that currency. So the money I'm getting, they're 100,000 rupiah notes and 50,000 rupiah notes. And for the last couple of months, I've been thinking in terms of ringgit. You know, I buy something, a meal, and it's going to be 8 ringgit, 12 ringgit, you know, a nice meal, 20 ringgit. You know, my brain is thinking in those terms, but now I've got to make a switch to, 1 million rupiah, 500,000 rupiah, 8 million rupiah, you know, and so the guy behind the counter, he takes out a big stack of local notes, you know, Indonesian rupiah, and he throws them on the counter. And he does this every day with all kinds of currencies. So he's up to speed with the mathematics. But I'm trying to keep up, you know, and he throws them into that machine. And I'm watching the machine and, you know, counts them, right? You see the number go up and you see the number, okay, and he pulls that out and he's got a... He could be a magician where he put in the right amount, and then while he's moving it and you're still looking at the number, he kind of like pockets half of it and only gives you the remaining half. Of course, they're not going to do that, but I'm just saying it's a stressful situation to be changing that much money in the open, in unfamiliar currencies. You got a lineup of people behind you, and they clearly are rushing you. They want to give you your money and go, like, out, next. But you haven't counted your money yet. So what you should do is stand your ground, of course, and stay right in front of the window and say, okay, I'm not done my transaction until I've counted. And you make the guy watch you count, and the people behind you can get as angry as they want, but hey, that's what I have to do. But of course, I don't do that. I'm not that kind of person. I don't have that much assertiveness. So of course I move off to the right, and now and someone else has come up to the window, and I'm sort of crowded. There isn't enough elbow room, and there I am counting out 10 million rupiah. You know, like, oh, there's a pile of 1 million, there's a pile of 2 million, there's a pile of 3 million, and anybody around me walking by can see me just standing there counting out. I mean, for the average person, it's not a lot of money, but, you know, for what I'm doing and my current lifestyle, yeah, that's a lot of money. And anybody could just reach out, you know, just grab a handful of it and run away, you know. The chances of that are slim, but still, it's not a great environment to be changing money. There's tons of security, but it's all on their side. The business has security. They've got bulletproof glass. They've got security cameras. They've probably got, I don't know, do they have guns back there? Malaysia, they're probably not allowed, right? But I'm sure they have an alarm system. The business owners, when they made the business, they made sure that there was a lot of security, but all the security is for their business and their staff and their money. They didn't design the business to provide their customers any security. We're all on the outside. We're standing on the street. We're standing in busy traffic, and I was thinking about that, yeah. I mean, it saves them money. A good money-changing operation for a human being would have us inside the bulletproof glass with privacy, with, shades, and you would go into this thing and close the door, and there's the person. They can be behind their own bulletproof glass, but you should be inside your own little booth, and then you can hear them clearly, and you have enough time, and it's relaxing, and you're able to focus, and then you can count your money and put your money away safely without everybody seeing what you're doing. That would be a properly designed money-changing business for customers. But of course, that would cost a lot of money. They would need a lot more real estate inside the shopping mall. So they make it as small as possible and provide security for them, but absolutely no security for customers. And I was recently talking about a situation for YouTubers called Itchy Feet on the Cheap. And they posted a video back when they were leaving Ecuador. They were living there for a while and working, and they were leaving Ecuador and then moving to Cambodia. So they also had a time when they had to go to the bank and withdraw a large amount of money, like 2 months' salary, plus work bonuses. It was a lot of money all at once. They closed out their bank accounts, put all the money in their knapsack, and then they got robbed. They went back to their hotel, and then somebody followed them in their grab and put a gun in their face. They robbed them at gunpoint and grabbed their knapsack and ran away with it, and they lost all that money and one passport. So it caused them a lot of trouble. So I have this story in my mind because I've been thinking about it, and I just watched the video. So there I am. I did this the other day when I went to an ATM here to withdraw some money. And I was thinking where to put it. Put it in my wallet, in my pocket, or in my knapsack. And then when I did it again, I made sure that time to put on a money belt underneath my pants and underneath my shirt. And when I was at the ATM here in KL and I withdrew the money and I had my ATM card, I made sure to, there was nobody in line at that time. Everything was empty. So I could stand there at my leisure and then kind of get underneath my clothing and then put all the money and my ATM card in my money belt under my clothes and zip it. And that's the most secure thing you can do. And I could have brought my money belt this morning when I changed money, but I didn't because I knew I was going to get a stack of Indonesian rupiah about this thick. Once you get 10 million rupiah, even at 100,000 rupiah notes and 50,000 rupiah notes, it's a substantial stack, and it's not really going to fit inside the money belt. It's not designed for that thick, a bunch of money. So when I was there, I was trying to figure out what to do, and I had like a pouch that goes around my neck and goes under my shirt, and that's where I put the money and my passport, but it ends up like a big, you can see it quite clearly, it's underneath my shirt hanging around my neck, but there's this big blob, you can see it underneath my shirt. And then the whole time, after that I ran some other errands, but the whole time I was walking around in the mall, I was sort of aware of this thing, and I was thinking, in an extreme situation, very rare that this happens, but in an extreme situation, somebody could have been watching that money-changing operation, waiting for someone to change a lot of money, and then they just follow them and then look for their opportunity. And so I thought, somebody could be following me. And I knew nobody was, but, I had this story on my mind. So in fact, I did from time to time just sort of look around me. It was like, no, I don't see anybody following me. And eventually I took that money pouch from around my neck and I did put it inside my knapsack in a deep hidden pocket because it seemed like this was not safe at all, around my neck and here. It was very, very visible. So I thought, well, my knapsack is not that safe either, but it's the best I can do for now. And then once I put it inside my knapsack, buried deep in there, then even there, the whole time that I came all the way back to my hotel, I did from time to time think about, okay, is anyone following me? And then I just sort of, stop and look around, and it's like, okay, nobody's following me, so I'm good. But I had that thought, on my mind. Funny thing is, I went in there to get 10 million rupiah, and I didn't actually get it because they didn't have that much. Yeah, it's kind of funny looking at those places. I told the guy I wanted 10 million rupiah, and then he said, oh, hold on a second. And he started opening drawers, right? They have all those drawers in there, and every drawer is just jammed with money. And it's quite interesting that considering all the security they do have, it's still designed in such a way that me as a customer looking through the window, every time he opens a drawer, I just see stacks and stacks and stacks of currency, all kinds of currencies. Just looks like a lot of money. And then he closes it, goes to the next drawer, and I can see all these drawers as he's opening them one by one. And you think from a security point of view, that's not great, because if you were a career thief and you were in the business of robbing places, you went to change money there, you'd probably look at all those drawers and the wheels would start turning, right? You're thinking, this isn't a bad place to rob sometime. I should come up with an Ocean's 11 plan to, a heist. We need to rob this place. Because it's never a good idea to show money, because it just gives people ideas, right? You would think a business like that would somehow arrange it so that when they are accessing their money, the customers crowding around the windows don't get a front row seat and can see all that money. It'd be very tempting to the wrong element, So that was kind of interesting. And then I went from there to the grocery store. Sam's? Yeah, Sam's Groceria. This is at KL Central. And when I came down the escalator, I noticed something different about Sam's, because it has a big, wide open entrance. But now I saw more security guards than normal, and the normal entrance had been roped off, and then there was just a narrow gate that you could enter in. I thought, oh, looks like they're getting serious about security. And all I wanted to do was buy a box of cornflakes. The store where I usually buy cornflakes is sold out. They don't have any more. And I thought Sam's, might have some cornflakes. So I thought, okay, I'll just pop into Sam's and get a box of cornflakes. But I had my knapsack on, and I thought, even before I got there, okay, this is going to be a problem. And then if the security guard tells me, oh, you have to leave your knapsack here at the front, you're not allowed, for shoplifting, you're not allowed to take a knapsack in. I run into that quite often with stores. And whenever that happens, I just refuse to go in. I just go somewhere else. And in this case, of course I would refuse, because now I've got my passport and all this money for my trip in my knapsack. And it's not like I'm going to go in to buy some cornflakes and hand the security guard my knapsack and he'll just dump it on the floor for me to come back out. So basically, if he asks me to leave it, I won't be able to go into the store. So I had all this going through my mind as I'm approaching Sam's. And then I get to the little narrow entranceway, and I'm walking by the guard. He's letting me in, but then as soon as I get past him, he saw the knapsack on my back. It was a relatively small one, so he didn't really see it until I was past him. And then he stopped me. He says, no, oh, sir. Very nice guy, very polite about it. And it turns out they have a system now where you can take your knapsack in, but he has a big pile of zip ties, and he had to put a zip tie through the zipper on my knapsack and then, close it. And then I go into the store like that. Then you're allowed to enter. So that was kind of funny. Sam's had no cornflakes. Why is it nobody ever has cornflakes? Or maybe it's the most popular cereal and is always sold out, because they've got like a massive wall of cereal, but it's all the bright, colorful ones, the ones that are not just pure sugar, all the, children's cereals and like nothing but sugar, sugar, sugar. And I think cornflakes is also mostly sugar, probably, when you look at the ingredients, but it feels like it's a more simple kind of breakfast. Like I can't eat, a bowl of pure sugar, but I do enjoy cornflakes. But they never have cornflakes. They have every other kind loaded with sugar, but cornflakes is always sold out. So they had no cornflakes. Me and my life. So now I run into this problem all the time too. I'll go into a store to buy something. They won't have the thing I want, but now I'm faced with this situation of walking out of the store without buying anything. And that's like a red flag for a thief, isn't it? It's like as soon as you just try to walk out without going through the cash register, it's like, oh, he probably stole a bunch of stuff, right? So whenever this happens to me, I go in to buy cornflakes. There are no cornflakes, but I want to buy something now to make sure I don't look so guilty. So then I look around the shelf and think, well, I have to buy something now. So I'm trying to find some little thing that I can buy, and then I pay for it at the cash register. And then the security guard, he sees me paying for my purchase and leaving, and everything's good to go. And I thought, oh, actually, I could use some coffee mate, for my instant coffee in the morning. I usually use coffee powder, milk powder. And I thought, okay, I think I'm running out of that. So I bought a little bag of coffee powder. And then I went through the cash register to buy that. But then what I normally do, the woman at the cash register said, plastic? Do you want a bag? Because I think you have to pay for the bag if you want one. But I always put my purchases inside my knapsack. I never get the bag because I'm not like a super environmentalist, but why get a bag if you don't need one? I just put it in my knapsack. So I'm like, no, I don't need a bag. I can just put it in my knapsack, and I take my knapsack off, and no, I can't. I can't put it in my knapsack because they've zip tied it shut. I can't undo the zipper. And of course, normally I would have a pair of scissors or a knife. I can cut it, but of course, my knife, my little pocket knife, is inside the knapsack behind the zip-tied zippers. So now there I am. It's like, oh, now I can't do that. So then I leave the store and I'm holding my purchase in my hand, and I go by the security guard and I show him my little bag of, this is what I bought, and I have my receipt in the other hand, and I'm like, see, please don't arrest me. This is what I bought. Here's my receipt. And he's like, yes, sir. You may pass. So I go outside and I'm heading towards the escalator, and I'm still holding this bag of coffee mate. And like, what am I going to carry this around the entire day? And then I turn around and I go back to the guard and it's like, you, by any chance, you wouldn't have a pair of scissors, would you? And it turns out they had built that into the system. The one guard puts on the zip ties, and then on the other end, the guard checks to make sure that your knapsack is still sealed. You haven't broken the seal on your own, but he does have a pair of scissors on like a little stand he had there. And I asked him, oh, you wouldn't have scissors, would you? And he said, yes, I do. And he got the scissors and he cut them off for me, so I could finally put my purchases away, Yeah, this morning was all about security, thoughts about security, because from that point on, I was aware of people around me. And I took the LRT from there. I only went one stop. I just went from there to Saramonic because I wanted to go somewhere else, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So then I ended up walking all the way from Saramonic to my hotel. And when I got to somewhat near my hotel, I'm waiting at this traffic light, and a really weird guy seemed to be following me. Like he didn't look trustworthy. He's a big man, kind of dirty clothes, looked a bit unkempt. He didn't look trustworthy or safe. And he came up behind me, and he just insisted on standing right behind me at this where I was waiting for a crosswalk. And it bugged me that he was right behind me like that. So I kind of kept moving a little bit, and then he moved to stay behind me, right? And then I crossed, I got the little green man, you can cross now. So I go across, and he fell in step behind me. And then I kind of moved around on the sidewalk because there was like a real sidewalk here. And then there was a kind of a rooftop and then some steps that go down to a different sidewalk, like right outside the store windows. And to get rid of this guy, I went down to the shops there, walking along the windows, and then he also went down the steps and stayed right behind me. And I thought, okay, I don't like this. Like, why are you following me like that? And then I got to a corner and I slowed down and I just sort of pulled over to the side as if I was reaching for my phone, and I was going to check my phone or something. And then I stopped. I basically just stopped walking and I let him catch up with me. And then I let him get ahead of me. When we got to the next corner, I waited until I saw which he chose a direction. He chose to go this way. And as soon as I saw where he was going, I went the other way. It was just like, I just didn't like this guy behind me. There was something about him. Got my spidey sense tingling. And it was probably because I had been thinking about security so much. But I think it was a wise thing to do, just to get rid of this guy. Man, I didn't like that he was following me. But anyway, I lost him. And I made it back. I made it back alive. Just to continue the Planet Doug parade of trivia, maybe that's what I'll call it, to do with my day. And the theme seemed to have been a combination of security and organization, because I decided after I finished not getting my cornflakes, I had to buy something else. Maybe I'll leave that story. I'll set that story aside for just a minute. But I ended up taking the LRT from KL Central only to Pasar-Seni. I didn't go all the way to my hotel's neighborhood. I got off at Pasar-Seni. And the reason I did that was because for whatever reason, I felt like a Ramly burger. It's probably because of all these vloggers, the YouTubers that all come to Malaysia. Like every day I turn on YouTube, there's like 5 more have shown up in Kuala Lumpur. And one of the videos they all make, of course, they all go to Batu Caves, etc., etc. And of course, they all have to have a Ramly burger and make a video about it. And one guy that I've become aware of recently, Zane Travel, I'm not sure. I noticed in my feed, I haven't watched the video yet, he posted his Ramly burger video. So he probably put the idea in my head. I was like, maybe for lunch, I'll have a Ramly burger. Why not? I don't think I've had one since I've been back in Malaysia. So I thought, okay, I'll do that. And there's a Ramly burger stall in Pasar-Seni right near Vinijaya, the Indian restaurant that I used to go to all the time. And it was very near the hostel where I used to stay. There's a place there where you can get a Ramly burger. But the problem with this place is you never know when it's open. There's no rhyme or reason to it. I never know. Days of the week, times of the day, completely random. So more than once, I've gone there to get a Ramly burger and found them to be closed. They will be open other times. It's like a 50-50 shot. You want a Ramly burger, you go there, he's not open. Oh, he is open. Oh, he's not open. And you don't know. It's impossible to say. And again, with my brain, the way I think, I'm thinking, what's so hard about putting up the hours? Like maybe there are no regular hours. Maybe it's run by a guy who just shows up whenever he feels like it. I don't know. But I don't know. If there are hours, I don't know. Put up a little sign that says, we are open Monday through Friday, at these hours. And you don't actually have to stick to them 100%. If you're that kind of a business owner, you like to play it fast and loose, okay. But I don't know, maybe give your customers a vague idea of when you might be open, because I can say with absolute certainty that they have lost me as a customer because they're never open when I go there. It's just not worth the risk. So I did it this time because it's been months since I had a Ramly burger, and I thought, I'll take a chance. And I thought, if he is closed, I'm right beside Vinijaya, and I have not been to Vinijaya in many, many weeks either. So I thought, okay, for lunch, I'll take a chance. I really did want a Ramley burger, or 2 or 3. And I rode on the LRT, got out, walked across the street, closed. You know, it's lunchtime, Thursday, busy day of the week. He'd have tons of customers if he were open, but no, closed. So I ended up having lunch at Vinijaya. And I don't go there very often, mainly because it's in a different neighborhood now. My hotel is relatively far away now. But they also don't make the dishes that they used to make. There was a certain number of dishes, the main one being eggplant. They used to have an eggplant dish, you know, routinely. And that was always a big part of my lunch. I really look forward to it. But they haven't had eggplant literally for years. They just stopped having eggplant. It's just not not on the buffet anymore. And then when I go there, I often miss the food. I'll go there right after the lunch rush, and they're like cleaned out, and I'm eating the dregs. So I haven't had good experiences there. So I haven't been there for a while, but I went there today. I sat down, and to my delight, a server came up to my table, a young man, and he's got the tablet. They have a new tablet ordering system. And he said to me, I can't remember the exact words he chose. I didn't really understand him. I had to sort of ask him a couple of times to repeat himself. But he was basically saying, "Oh, we haven't seen you in a while, sir. You know, welcome back." And I said, "Oh," he remembered me. You know, he served me before. And he was one of the guys that I had the whole ice water drama with for a long time. I kept trying to order ice water, and I could never communicate what it was I wanted. And I eventually got them to understand. And here I was, I've come back for the first time in months. And he remembered me. He says, welcome back. And then he's adding up my bill, and he turns to me and says, like, two ice waters? Yes, thank you very much. So he even remembered that I always have 2 glasses of ice water, with my lunch. So that was kind of funny. Last part of my story, we're going to revert back to technology because my GoPro media mod is still broken. The latch that holds the door, which holds the GoPro in place, it just snapped off and it's broken. And I've been trying to figure out a way to fix it. And it occurred to me that I'm doing this very often in my life, and I really miss the workshop. Like, again, I don't know how it is in a home here in Malaysia or in a lot of countries in Asia, but in Canada, it's very typical in a Canadian house that somewhere in the house there is a workshop. There's like one room. It's usually Dad's room. Dad has his workshop, and that's where all his tools are. And every father in Canada eventually amasses a set of tools. He's got drills and a vise and like a table vise and all kinds of screws and pliers and soldering irons. And, over the years ends up with all the tools you would ever need, a set of wrenches and pliers and on and on. And throughout the house, like throughout a Canadian house, you end up with junk drawers. They're usually in the kitchen, and you pull open that junk drawer and it is filled with every type of glue, White Elmer's glue, super glue. It's got, epoxy adhesive, where you combine two liquids and mix it together to get a glue. You've got every type of tape imaginable. You've got some Scotch tape, you've got electrical tape, you've got duct tape, you've got zip ties, like every little thing you might need to fix things or repair things is somewhere in your own house, either in the junk drawer or downstairs in Dad's workshop. And as I've been overseas, of course, in a hotel room like this, I don't have a workshop, I don't have a junk drawer, and I'm always needing to fix things. I'm always needing to modify things, to fix things, to repair things, to do little things all the time. And it's such a more difficult task to do anything is so difficult. Like the simplest job, like back in a Canadian home with all my tools, you could just get it done like that. But when you're sitting here in a hotel room, you don't have any of your tools, and then you end up doing a lot of shopping. And over the years, I can't tell you how many hacksaw blades I've purchased. I always need to cut something, and I don't have anything that'll cut whatever it is I need to cut. So I go down to the hardware store and I'll buy just a hacksaw blade. No saw or anything, but just the blade, and it costs like 10 cents or 20 cents or something. And you buy the blade and you bring it back to your hotel room and you cut off whatever it is you need to cut off, cut through something to make it shorter or whatever. And then when you leave that hotel or that city, wherever you're going to, you just leave the hacksaw behind. And then the next town you get to is like, oh, I need to cut something again. And you have to go up and buy a new hacksaw. And it's just like that all the time. And that problem is compounded with how you're not as familiar with the city around you as you would be with a city in your home country. So you tell me in Canada, Doug, I need some super glue and I need a thick rubber band about 4 inches long. I'm out the door, I go to the shop, I buy it, I bring it home. I know where to go to get these things. I know where to buy a hacksaw blade. I know it's not a chore, but in countries like Malaysia, where I'm less familiar with the stores, I end up wandering around like a zombie, just constantly trying to find the tiniest little things. It's like my life is dominated by trivia. So this gets back to what I was talking about in the mall, because one idea, it's not a great idea, but it's the only one I have right now for fixing my media mod, is maybe I can just take a big rubber band and wrap it around, and that will hold the door in place. And as a temporary fix, maybe that will work. So there I am at KL Central thinking, okay, I want to buy some rubber bands. But they can't be those like thin ones, when you buy a drink or something and they wrap up the top of the plastic bag with a rubber band. Not one of those. I need a thicker one. So of course, I'm walking through KL Central from one end to the other. I got my steps in. I was like a marathon runner. I got my exercise. I went through that entire mall, went to every single store I could think of that might carry something like this. Couldn't find them anywhere. And then when I got out of the LRT in Pasir Seni, I made sure to walk back to the hotel, taking as many commercial streets as I could, looking for stationery stores or any kind of a store where I have a hope of getting the type of elastic band I was looking for. And I went to store after store after store. I'm walking and walking and walking. Nobody even knows, of course, what I'm asking for. I ask for, a rubber band, elastic band. Nobody knows what that is. And when I finally found it, it's always, the tiny red ones, the little thin ones. And it's, no, that's not going to work. And I finally went into a stationery store and I asked the man who was helping customers, but he didn't speak English and he didn't know. But he found someone else who spoke English, and I asked about rubber bands. And lo and behold, this woman brought me to a counter area, and they had all the usual tiny ones, the little red ones in little bags. But then they had these big industrial-sized bags of thicker rubber bands. And this is also something that always happens because, again, when you're growing up in a house in Canada, you open up that junk drawer, okay, it's going to have a big bag of industrial rubber bands because long ago, somebody needed one rubber band. But you can't buy just one. You ended up buying a big bag of them, but that's okay because you bring it home, you use one, you put the rest in the drawer, and now for the next 10 years, you've got a supply of thick rubber bands. But when you don't have a home and you're just sort of backpacking around, you end up having to buy the economy-sized bag, the giant bag of rubber bands. You use 2 of them, and now you've got all these leftovers. You end up overpaying for everything. Like, it's not a very efficient economic life to live like this. So here they are. Check that out. And they're not quite right either because again, I was speaking with a new friend of mine I've met through Planet Doug. Hello, Ken. Shout out to Ken in the United States. He and I are connected on social media, and he's into cameras, into gear. He does woodworking. You know, it's got a lot of tools. He's got one of these houses I'm talking about that's probably got every tool, every type of glue and tape and tool you can imagine ready to go, you know, and he does a lot of this sort of work. So he and I were chatting about ways for me to fix my media mod, and one of his ideas was the elastic band, and he showed me on video. He recorded a little video clip and sent it to me with this rubber band, and it was the perfect size, you know, the exact right length you might need for wrapping around a GoPro. And that was the kind of rubber band I wanted, but all I could find was this, and these ones are thick and strong enough, exactly what I want, but they're so big, like it's like twice as big as I want. So in fact, I have to double them over and somehow get this around my GoPro. And it's not very easy to do, but I can work with this. So as a temporary fix, this is what I was going to do. And I was worried at first that you can't do this with the GoPro, because if something goes over the screen of the GoPro, it's constantly going to be pushing buttons, right? So it'll, you know, turn off the GoPro, start recording, stop recording, it'll change settings. But it turns out that rubber doesn't trigger the touch sensitive screen. So even if this is wrapped around the GoPro, and even if it's pressing against the screen, it doesn't actually trigger it. The way they're designed, of course, they respond to fingers, you know, the moisture or the electrical conducting ability or whatever it is about your skin operates the touch screen. But this rubber, even if you press it against the GoPro screen, the touch screen, it doesn't operate anything. So I can use this. But what I ended up doing, instead of doubling it up, because doubling it makes it almost too strong. So what I've done is I've shortened it, and I've been experimenting for the last hour or so by tying a knot in it and making it shorter and shorter and shorter and adjusting the knot and moving it down until I get it to the exact right length. And then I can use this loop to stretch it and then put it around, you know, the GoPro, and then you can use this loop, you know, to pull it off. So there I am with, you know, by the time you put together the GoPro, the Rode wireless Go microphone, the media mod, the memory card, you know, the fancy grip that I have, you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of dollars. You know, it's a very expensive piece of camera gear, and I'm keeping it operational with a rubber band. You know, it's going to look like a piece of junk. This rubber band is going to be holding the whole thing together. So that's pretty funny. So that's another one of my stories. One more story, which is just part of the Planet Doug parade of trivia. The Planet Doug Trivia Parade. I've got this thing, the Insta360 invisible selfie stick, and it has a rubberized handle, but on this one, it came loose, so it was sliding up and down, right? So I've been thinking off and on that I need to get some glue and somehow get some glue under there and then glue it onto the handle so it doesn't, you know, fall off anymore. And I've been thinking about that for a while. I never got around to it. But today, when I was buying my industrial-sized bag of rubber bands, which, by the way, is just like the hacksaw blades, I'm probably going to keep, you know, like 10 of these. I'll pull 10 out, put them in my bag, and the rest of them I'll just have to leave behind, you know. So that's what happens when you're traveling, you know. Whenever you need something, you end up buying the economy pack, but you only need one or two. But that's what happens when you don't have a junk drawer. And anyway, so while I was at the stationery store, I saw they had some super glue. And I thought, okay, yeah, let's try super glue. You know, maybe that'll work, a couple of drops of that. Oh, super glue, you know. I knew better. I know from experience that if I need to do repairs and I spend the day shopping for tools and items to make those repairs, I know I should always wait until the next day to actually do the repairs. Because by the time I find the rubber bands By the time I've changed money, by the time I've, shopped for cornflakes, by the time I've purchased super glue and I gotten back to my hotel room, I'm tired. I'm flustered. I'm not focused. I'm not thinking straight. And if I try to do the repairs, like I bought the super glue to glue this handle, I knew I should not do it today because I'm too tired now. I spent the whole day, I'm exhausted. I should wait until tomorrow morning when I'm fresh. But I ignored that little voice in my head and I thought, how hard can it be? Let's, a couple of drops of super glue on here. We put the handle in place, we'll be done. Oh boy. Of course, the super glue has a seal on it, right? The little tube, when you buy it, it has a little seal and you have to puncture the seal, and the lid of this one is designed to puncture the seal. So I'm sitting here on the bed, I'm not thinking straight, I'm moving too fast, I know it's a bad idea, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And I take off the lid and I turn this around so that I can puncture the seal, and I'm holding onto it, and I guess like a dummy, I'm barely aware of what I'm doing. I'm having trouble puncturing the seal, and I add more and more pressure. I'm trying to get it through, and I apply so much pressure that it finally pops through, but I've been squeezing this so tight that once I hit the seal, it was like a geyser of super glue. Just went all over me, all over my shorts, all over my stomach. I didn't have a shirt on at the time. I sprayed super glue all over my hands. All my fingers were stuck together. I had super glue all over my stomach and stuck in all my body hair, so everything was glued together. My shorts were glued to my body. My shirt was glued. It's just everything was glued together. It was like an explosion of super glue. And all my fingertips now, I've got that weird feeling because I've got super glue all over the tips of them. It's like I have no sense of touch anymore right now. What a disaster, just super glue everywhere. And I thought, well, I dealt with this as much as I could. There's like super glue all over my shorts. I couldn't get rid of it. I'm trying to, you try to wipe it up with like a Kleenex or something, but of course the Kleenex just sticks to the super glue and you're just making a giant mess out of everything. So I just thought, okay, let's just let it all dry and I'll try and scrape it off later. And then I tried to super glue this, and I botched it completely. I totally botched it. I just made a total mess of it because it's super glue, right? I should have known better. But I moved the rubber handle all the way off, and then I applied super glue to the metal handle, and then I tried to push the rubber handle down to the bottom. But because my hands were still covered in super glue and I was dealing with such a mess, my fingers were too sticky. I didn't get a good grip on it, and I tried to move it all the way down in a smooth motion, and it got stuck part way, and I tried to readjust my fingers, but by the time I did that, the glue had set. So as you can see, it's glued in place, but it's glued in place incorrectly. It's like way above the bottom. So I've got all this exposed metal at the bottom, and my handle, my rubberized grip, is super glued in place, but it's super glued in the wrong place. So it's like, what a crazy, crazy life. It's just like, it's not a disaster, The main reason I wanted to glue it in place was because if I had the camera on here and I was holding that grip, the whole stick would actually slide through the grip and just like it would fall off. So I don't really need the grip to hold on to it. I just need it to be locked into position. So it's okay where it is, but it would have been better if I'd placed it all the way down to the bottom where it's supposed to go. And of course, I've got all this extra super glue. You can see all of the extra stuff there. I just made a mess. It looks ugly. It looks worn and beat up. And anyway. But the funny part really was pushing down on that lid, and then it just burst open, and the super glue just went everywhere. And you know that when you're going to super glue something, you're going to get a little bit on your finger and thumb. You always glue your thumb and finger together. It's just the way it is. So I'm expecting a little bit of glue to be where it's not supposed to be, but this eruption, what a mess that was. It just went everywhere. And I often think about the people that work at the super glue company, maybe the owners or the managers, because they all know what's happening out there in the world. I mean, they must just laugh and laugh and laugh in their office. They're selling millions of these little tubes of disaster all over the world, and they know that every second, every third person who tries to use super glue to do something ends up just creating a disaster. I mean, they know what happens probably to every second customer. And then even like every customer glues their fingers together. We all do. And of course, you buy one of these tubes for one job, and then you put it in your junk drawer, or I'll put this in my knapsack, and I'll carry this around for the next 6 months thinking, oh, I have super glue. But of course, by the time you go to use it, the whole thing is sealed solid, it's dried out, then you throw it away and you buy another tube, right? They're one-use tubes. That's just how it goes. You know, by the time I need this again, this tube will be dried up and I won't be able to use it, and I'll have to buy a brand new one. So all the super glue guys at the super glue company, they must be thinking, man, we're geniuses. You know, we came up with the ultimate consumer item. You know, customers will keep on buying it, and every time they need it, they need to buy a brand new tube and just throw the rest away. So they're making money hand over fist. We buy 10 times more super glue than we ever needed. Oh well. So I think that is the end of my day here. I'm not going to do any more technology stuff. This rubber band business, I'm going to keep that. I'm going to wait until tomorrow to perfect this. I mean, to be honest, I really should just buy a brand new GoPro Media Mod, but that's just ridiculous. It's like a, what, $80, $90 item? And the whole thing works perfectly. I mean, I don't want to replace the entire Media Mod just because this little tiny plastic latch broke off. It's like, it's so silly. And there's no way to repair it other than what I'm talking about. You know, you have to come up with your own elastic band method or do something. But yeah, anyway, we'll see. And in any event, I'm hoping that GoPro is busy redesigning the GoPro Media Mod. David Manning on his YouTube channel, a few months ago, he shot a video talking about the problems with the Media Mod design. And all the same problems I've been raving about. David Manning, much more polite, much more professional about it, but he kind of, in his video, he spoke directly to GoPro and said, GoPro, listen, I love the Media Mod, I love what it does, but there are a couple of really big problems with it, and he told them how to fix it. It's easy to fix, just do this and do this. And he spoke directly to GoPro, and GoPro listens to him. I noticed them interacting with him on YouTube. He's like a big YouTuber in the action camera world. And I think he has their ear. When he speaks, GoPro listens. So I'm hoping they took his advice. And at some point, GoPro's going to release a new Media Mod, and they will have fixed these problems. And then I can buy a new one. But I don't want to replace this one. It's too expensive to replace just because the silly door latch broke. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. It's sort of like you buy a refrigerator and then the foot peg on the bottom breaks, and now the refrigerator just doesn't work anymore because it's missing a foot, and you have to buy a whole new fridge just because the foot is broken. You know, that's kind of an analogy here. Unfortunately, like on a fridge, you can replace the foot with a block of wood, you know, that works. But with the GoPro, it's a little bit more complicated than that. I can't do that with the Media Mod. Anyway, that's it. Shutting down. Yeah, what a day I've had. The Planet Doug Trivia Parade is ending for another day. See you in the next video.